All right, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, it is the Center Street Boys. Strap, S.T.R.A.P, Des, D-E-Z, and Dipo, D-I-P-O, are back again. And we have another special guest today. Not another, but a special guest. This is the first guest. I said another because I'm thinking about another show. But this is our first guest today. We have LT. LT, my brother, how you doing today?
Man, I'm doing great. How about y'all?
I'm doing great. Let's talk to the guys in Dallas over there.
Man, what's going on, man?
What's up? How's the weather? Is it raining? I know it was a hurricane.
I'll let Des answer that.
It got to be humid with who was it? Issa Rae, Hurricane Issa Rae.
Yeah. So we have we are conducting this via Zoom. I know this whole setup is usually a 3-man bounce back and forth conversation based platform where we talk about various topics. But this topic in particular, it just doesn't feel right us three talking about it without an external POV, point of view. And we went above all the oceans, above all the seas to look for this subject matter expert that is sitting to the right of me, LT. So
I'm flattered.
I know, man. Thank you for first of all accepting my invitation and sitting here with us. And secondly, thank you for showing up and doing this. After accepting the invitation, because I know people accept and they don't show up.
Nah, man, it's an honor. I feel obligated to speak on the issue as somebody that feels like they're slightly educated on it. Absolutely. I don't know if I'm educated,
subject matter expert, right?
As much as he says, but
all right. So, what you saying over there, fellas?
No, man, we're ready to go.
All right. So let's massage this in. Let's start off with a jog before we go into the sprint. This is the idea that we want to lead off today with this podcast or with this episode. Equality. The idea of equality in its totality, right? When it comes to race, when it comes to gender, when it comes to religion, when it comes to ideology and placement of ideology and implementation of ideology, and to mention but a few. But I know it's a very broad spectrum of ideas that we're bringing forth. But before we dive into these waters, what's your idea of equality? Just you, and I don't want to describe you, but you, to how I look at you, how you, as a Black man, maybe you could correct me. What's your idea of equality?
No, I absolutely identify as a Black man.
All right.
Yeah, I love it. Love being Black and everything that comes along with it. So equality is just in the terms is just having the same opportunities as everybody else, having the same chance, in essence, a level playing field. That's equality to me.
Right.
The same obstacles, the same hurdles, the same monetary value, things like that. So that's equality to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with LT. I think we talked about this in our last episode. Like we did talk about opportunities. Just being able to have start from the same footage, being able to have the same opportunities, like you said, not feel like I'm starting one step behind you. Like we're all starting from the same level and trying to work our way up. And that's equality. And it's a good thing you talked about equality in race, in gender, because and right now with the whole social movement, the protests, we can see a lot of people are having a hard time getting used to the idea that in America people are not really equal like that. And like LT said, I appreciate you saying you love being a Black man. So do I.
Right.
So it's as Black men, I feel like we are obligated to talk about this type of issue, because this is not just affecting us; it's affecting our brothers and sisters and maybe children and future generations.
Yeah, I think I think for years we've been in the forefront of it. So we we won't do due diligence if we don't, as African Americans, as Black people, Africans, if we don't speak for it. Just based on what has happened we could go back decades, centuries, however far back you want to. I think like Des has seen, regularly I still play soccer, and after some of our games I play. So a little backstory: I play soccer with a lot of people from different ethnicities, Hispanics, Asians, but I will say 95% of the time there are non-white players. And over time I've come to this realization that equality to take a huge foothold, for people to be aware or be willing to agree to even come to terms with it. I feel like as a race of Black people, we probably are at the forefront of that argument. I say this based on this point: the whole Black Lives Matter movement, or things in that spectrum. If the system was to come to recognition with things like that, I feel like every other race kind of falls in line, because in my opinion, once you agree that Black lives do matter, you can't then discriminate against a Hispanic guy. You can't generalize it. You can't be prejudiced against a Hispanic guy you say, oh, he may be or may not be illegal. If you do that, it also means that you're not really honest when you say Black lives do matter, because we're all minorities. We're just in different shades. So right. I feel in terms of equality, it helps hold firm. Once you put your actions, you put your words to actions when it comes to Black Lives Matter, it almost trickles down. It's a trickle down effect, I feel like, across the board, even to a case of gender, right? I think that I wasn't born then, but back in the days, having gender and race was almost kind of hand in hand, where ladies come to speak up. What's the lady's name with the gesture? But having those kinds of gender related,
Rosie the Riveter.
Yeah. So having those kind of pictures or people, it affected both gender and race. So in all totality, I feel equality is key. It really goes a long way, not just as a race, but also a gender. So yeah.
I love what he said about soccer.
Yeah.
Soccer or football, as it's known around the rest of the world.
Yeah.
But all the different ethnicities that come together around one sport, because it's a common interest, a common love. Right. It's the world sport. I mean, y'all know that. A lot of us Americans don't understand that, but it's the world sport. And I think it's the perfect example when we talk about a level playing field, because it doesn't matter what your ethnicity is. It matters what your skill level is, what you have to offer to the game. Right. And that's why sports is such a great unifier, because at the end of the day, it ain't about what you look like. It's about how you show and prove. So I'm glad you brought that up.
So for the jokes, your neighborhood racist is supporting a Black dude via a team in the NFL on a Sunday, and then wearing his police uniform and shooting him down on a Monday, right?
Man,
I mean, that's heavy.
Deep.
I mean, it's heavy. But
you like Tyreek Hill because he runs fast on the field, but you don't like him running fast on the streets because you harassing him and he's scared for his life. But that's a different topic for another day. But sports is a very polarizing field. I mean, it is the best sports, the idea of sports and how sports came into existence, especially friendly competitive sports, is via war. They were tired of killing people, so now we created sports, and that's how Olympics, where countries came together to show who's the best country, or different deportations of society. So let's say your tribe versus my tribe to see who's the fastest runner, rather than going there and killing you, right?
Right.
And then the idea of sports and unification of people, and the idea of how that has brought a form of equality. And equality, yes, you're equal in sports, but there's merit in sports, because I don't care. I'm a man, you're a man, but you're faster than me. You're faster than me.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to get the wide receiver or some position. You know what I mean? So every placement in sports is based off merit.
Yeah.
But the plot gets thicker, right? The plot gets thicker when a certain group of people have superior abilities and they start getting placed everywhere in that sports arena. Then guess what? We have this idea of system. So the people that the people that participate in the sport and pull the gravitas to all the crowds and the people that come to watch them, the people that run that may not necessarily have the abilities of the people playing sports, right?
Correct.
But they have the power, maybe through resources, to galvanize and bring people together and get TV licenses and all these different things to get these names in the sports arena or the sports field to get looked at, even though we are still looking at it as a global unification of people, because I don't care how I feel, but every Sunday I'm going to support my team.
Right. And
my team is predominantly, let me say, okay, but maybe 60%, 70% African Americans. But guess what? I may have some prejudice in me on another day, but on Sunday, there's that unification.
True.
Just that one day.
True.
Okay. On a side note, and I know we have to come back to the topic of equality, but I heard that in Jamaica, when Usain Bolt used to run, the crime rate used to go down by a lot. Like everything would stop. That's crazy, but just playing off your idea of sports. But I was going through sports and system in sports. But
right.
I got something to say about that, man. Yeah, sport as a whole, like what brings joy to people is not really like it's not like an ideology or like it's not a culture. It's just a feeling. You know, it's a feeling when you win, when you're losing, you guys get together. But then because we're talking about equality, a good example is Colin Kaepernick, right? Just think about Colin Kaepernick when he used to be at the peak of his game and he was winning games for the 49ers. People loved him, right? And then when he started taking the knee, like what happened? You guys know the aftermath, like, and then he was like the most hated person in the NFL. Correct. So it's like those people, the same people that used to love him, now like they got something to say about him and they hate it. So it was just a feeling, like a temporary feeling. The equality that we definitely talking about, it has to be like a culture. It has to be something that remains with us. You know,
absolutely.
Yeah. You're absolutely right, bro. You have hit the nail right there. Because if you're saying it's the whole, and I don't want to use pre-colonial or slave type of ideologies of get in line type of thing, you know that shut up and dribble has that pre-colonial get in line type of connotation.
Yeah, stay in your place. Absolutely.
Stay in your place. Like Colin Kaepernick, it's fun when he's throwing those balls, but when he's speaking about they're like, they want to hear it. They just want, and that is deep now. Now we're going into these waters of how they envision you as a person of color, entertaining them on a Sunday or a Friday or a Saturday. It kind of like what we talked about last episode when I said, me as a black man growing up in Uganda, not knowing that I was even black, I thought I was a tribe, right? And then, and then growing up, all the things I saw that were great were all black people. I saw Michael Jackson. I saw, I grew up around, 50, America does a good job exporting black culture, right? Mm-hmm. Sports is a big export, right? Mm-hmm. Michael Jordan was everywhere. Ask them, they saw Michael Jordan everywhere, He was like a god. And I come here and I realize the only equity we have is sweat. It's not land, it's sweat. It's either dancing or entertaining, but you're working, it's a physical thing, not a more thinking thing. And I'm like, really? Who controls these places that divide that equity? Or like, okay, Michael Jordan gets this contract. Who gives Michael Jordan that contract? Who are the board members in that room, and how do they look like? Are they Michael Jordan's complexion. And that's when the story gets deep, when we talk about equality and we talk about system and how system has been created to control other systems. So there's a system to control another system. So let's say, first thing, the number one system we have is household, right?
Okay.
You can control your household. You can raise your kids to believe a certain type of way. When they leave your household, they have another system. It's called school.
Right.
After school, they have another system. It's called military. After military, there's institution system, which is prison if they go out of line. So there's system after system after system that is like, dude, I get out of this small box, I get into another box, I get into another. It's just so many openings that you're like, and to the naked eye of a person from overseas, when they hear that Michael Jordan is making 30 million in 5 years, we're like, oh my God, that's a lot of money. But I never, until I came to the States, I never asked myself who signed that, who was the person negotiating, who gave Michael Jordan that money?
Yeah, it all depends on what context you see it in.
That's true. That's absolutely right. And he hit that point with that. Yeah, that's when he talked about calling cap, I felt that.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to clarify, I brought up something that I was talking about, the purest essence of sports at like the most basic level, not even thinking about the professional aspect of it. Yeah. But that you guys bring up another point to expound on that. It's just, yeah.
I think one thing that kind of almost encompasses this whole is the statement. I was kind of thinking through is what we see, aside from us loving the sports we play or loving sports as a from a gladiator mentality. When you pull in the professional side and the way systems run it and the way people of power run it is a perfect illustration of loving the culture and what it brings you. That means the monetary value behind the stars, but not loving the people of the culture. And we're talking about from a musical perspective, athletes and all this stuff, right? If we go back to slavery days, as minorities, we still had these abilities. The only difference between then and now is now we're actually getting paid. We might not be at the one percentile. I mean, you may just have one or two people there, but the difference is now we're getting paid. Some people may or may not love the fact that you're getting paid. Look at what's his name? Oh boy, KC's quarterback, 500 mil.
Yeah,
Mahomes.
Patrick Mahomes.
Mahomes, but it's like, they love what the culture brings. Mahomes getting 501. The owners are getting way more than that. Now, I'm not saying every owner or every board member has ulterior motives, but the hope is that in society you don't just love, or you don't. It's almost. I'm not trying to put a direct correlation to back in the day, but it's almost like if we're still struggling socially on so many different levels, it still seems like it's still the same ball game. You love what my skills bring to the table, but you don't love me in totality.
Right.
So,
man, I got a question for LT, man.
Okay.
Just like as a black man who was born and raised within the black culture in America, like where do you think we stand in terms of equality, like in America, and do you really think you guys feel like you felt as well that the current like Black Lives Matter movement and the whole protest, like, is that like something that is justified? Like, where do you guys stand with that personally?
Loaded question. All right. So first, where do we stand on equality in this race? It's not a completely level playing field. Some doors have been kicked down over the course of time. We do have access to upward mobility, which you mentioned Patrick Mahomes' contract, and some people may feel resentment towards that contract because they say, okay, look at a Patrick Mahomes. He signed a contract for $500 million. That proves that there's no, racism or whatever. They'll say that. But that's not the truth. That's upward mobility.
Yep.
To be 100% clear, only $63 million of that contract is guaranteed because that is the signing bonus. Okay. And then after that, there is a roster bonus for making the roster.
Right.
Until the moment that Patrick Mahomes proves him is no longer valuable to the Kansas City Chiefs, the contract's out the window. Yeah. It's not guaranteed. Just like every worker in any corporation.
Right. Yeah.
Right? It's all about what have you done for me lately. Right. So so that goes as far as that. Upward mobility. So we do have upward mobility, but there are ceilings. So we can talk about we finally able to be a black quarterback on an NFL team.
Isn't this like the richest generation of black quarterbacks since ever, where you talk about Watson, no, how am I saying the right names? Wilson, Mahomes, the guy from Baltimore, what's his name? Yeah, like
Jackson.
Yeah, so it's like a renaissance. I was reading somewhere it's a renaissance, like
right?
Trying to make a renaissance.
So yeah, I mean, for a long time, the dual threat quarterback, it was kind of a taboo thing. But it's like you said, this is a new thing. So the first black quarterback to win a Super Bowl was Doug Williams in '88. And then there was this huge gap between then and I believe Russell Wilson. But it was like, why? It's the same thing on any level, is that it's not that black people were incapable of playing quarterback or being a Super Bowl winning quarterback. It's just the opportunity. Now, when we talk about a ceiling, okay, that's the new ceiling because, all right, Super Bowl winning quarterback. But like you said, what about ownership? Who's the people that signed the check?
Yeah.
Now, this is groundbreaking because it's just recently announced that Patrick Mahomes has been offered a stake in ownership of the Kansas City Royals.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah. That is major.
That's major.
You see what I'm saying?
But again, I'm gonna play devil's advocate after you say that about the Royals. I think baseball is dying in this millennial generation. That's another topic. That's a sports topic.
Yeah. I'm still talking about upper mobility and like where we stand in society. So people confuse that with the fact that racism doesn't exist. You're allowed to reach a certain ceiling. Look at a Kanye West who is rich, right? By all standards, he's rich, but he goes on these rants and these tirades like, he's asking people to fund him for this and that and the other. And a lot of people are like, well, you're rich, why don't you just pay for it yourself? And like, we don't understand like how things operate at the next level. And it's like, okay, you got the Yeezys.
Right.
But he said, I jumped over the jump man.
Yeah.
So like, what more do I need to prove? For you to allow me to take that next step.
It's the ownership.
It's that ownership factor. So there are glass ceilings, even for the elite. There's a ceiling. I don't know if I can paint that any better about where we stand, because there's so much that goes into that about equality.
Yeah, I mean, Des, you want me to say something about what you asked?
No, go on.
So like, the idea and the concept of Black Lives Matter and the sentiment of it, I know all of us in this virtual space believe in it, and we want that to happen. But the money allocated in some of these groups could be tricky for some people, and because when people hear names, and I forgot about the billionaire, these are just unsighted rumors where billionaires are investing into these different groups and creating these, using us, because that sentiment hits to all of our hearts, right? Because our lives do matter, right? But the idea of a millionaire, companies come in and they oversaturate that word. And, sometimes, and I'll say this as a Ugandan person, I will not use this as an American Black man, because I'm a Black man living in America, but I was never born here. But I'll say this for my country. We love symbols more than substance in Uganda. So we prefer you give us a road saying Apollo Kagwa Road, but you guys, the British killed Apollo Kagwa, right? But you give him a road. You go in Congo, you hear Patrice Lumumba Avenue. We like symbols more than substance. Substance meaning change the system. Meaning, let's stop this neocolonialism with Belgium. Let's stop this neocolonialism with Britain coming and taking our resources and subtly controlling Africa. Let's stop all these different things. But we love symbols. We love the paintings on the streets.
Right.
I like the sentiment, but I don't like when big corporations pick it up and start campaigning with it and putting money.
Facts.
And that's where equality kind of loses its true true agenda, because you're not meeting that, you're not going in there to rectify the system.
Right. So I think I kind of pick up where the second part of this question. Is it justified? Yeah, the reaction is justified. We're well overdue for something like this, for a movement like this. These emotions have been building up. I seen someone post on the internet that this is the generation that saw Trayvon Martin murdered and his killer get away, right? Let's put that into context. So the guy that killed Trayvon Martin was not a police officer, okay? We heard the 911 call and they said, "Are you following him? We don't need you to do that," right? And so you know that he followed him. He escalated the situation because they told you, "We don't need you to follow him." And then once he confronted the young man got the best of him. Now it's like, okay, now you have the right to stand your ground, even after the dispatch told you not to follow him.
Right.
But I mean, we dig a little deeper and we find out that Zimmerman's dad was a judge or something like that. All these other things that go into that. So, but yeah, is it justified? Yeah. And that's why we're seeing what we're seeing right now, is that, okay, there's a whole generation of children that have been watching. And it's like, okay. That 60s stuff that we learned about, it's our turn to take the torch, so to speak.
People got thought.
Yeah. I agree with what you guys are saying, but I think on a previous discussion with the fellas, there's one thing that stuck to me that I feel is the greatest mode, is as much as these what's the word for it? These activities or these demonstrations have been great. I think it's time for us to make power moves towards legal changes, towards laws that put us at a better position. Picking up from where I left last week, we almost have to create a system where it becomes a criminal offense to do certain things. So it's not a matter of, because a lot of people these days are using the word teach like just teaching someone in a system that is known to be corrupt is the only way to go. Sometimes the only way to enforce change is to show that there's a risk and reward and there's a punishment to whatever your actions are. People talking about, training cops, better, all this stuff. Yeah, that's good. But also that doesn't necessarily mean that if it was to happen again, are we just going to say, we're going to give them better training? You almost have to let people have that, talk behind the mind. If you shoot someone without due cause as a law enforcement officer, you should be punished for that. Either, to be honest, criminally. For the Aubrey case, same thing goes. I think just in general, we almost have to make it to where things like this are abnormal.
Right.
I think at this in 2020, it's funny that it seems normal to where some people still have, still feel the need to argue otherwise when it comes to the punishments, or when it comes to laws, regarding things like this. And then back to our equality, conversation, certain things need to be changed on a, from a top level to where, I feel like we get to an even to a level playing field. And even also when it comes to criminalizing, blacks and minorities, we're talking about equality when it comes to, resources or things you have access to. But we're not talking about equality when it comes to how people are punished for crimes.
Mm-hmm.
So why would someone be getting a month in jail, whereas I'm getting a year in jail for the same crime?
Same crime.
Right. Disparities.
Why do I always have to have the best lawyer to get through certain situation? To me, I feel that's where when changes like those happen, I know it's important for us to still be when face value, right? We still need to be out there, protesting or just fighting through the media, right? But there has to be some substance to all that. Behind the scenes, we need to be making sure that on these different platforms, from a what's it called? From a resource perspective, trying to provide for your family, but also through justice system or how people are punished for crimes. Equality needs to be across the board. Either you making sure that everyone is punished the same, but also making sure that people are paid the same, be it a lady, a guy to a lady, or a white guy to a black guy, or a Hispanic guy.
Yeah. So I got something to say. Strap D talked about something earlier. I'm gonna get to that just a little bit later. But I have to say something. We have to be honest here. Like we all know that, like we could say the lack of equality. There's a lack of equality here. And then before I get to that, let me say we talked about it like during the last episode. Like we don't live in a world where everything's perfect, where like we all equals, so we all gonna have like exactly the same opportunities. But we're just talking about being able to be offered, at least have a chance to get the same opportunity as the next person, right? Yeah. So we know here in America there's a lack of equality, and we could say the lack of equality is due to the fact that there's systemic racism, as well as like the segregation that we see like among social classes. So like there's two things that play like a major part in why things are not fair or equal in America. Yeah. And this is a cycle that we've been living, like I know LT can speak to that better, but this is something that's been going on for like years, centuries, right? Like we're trying to find a way to break that cycle. And Strap D says something that made me think earlier about like household and family and institutions being like kind of like the base of everything. So like why do we have systemic racism? Like if you think about it, it starts from like a family level, right? People, you could say people are like raised or brought up to believe that, like being maybe Caucasian is, like you feel you have some sense of superiority compared to like a black dude next to you. Maybe we have to start by changing the mindset to be able to, like get to the point where people like the next generation is going to understand that like I'm black and you're white, but we bleed the same, like we're the same people. So like going from that mindset is going to allow us to be able to break the cycle, because we can have laws in place today. Like you see people wearing T-shirt and doing protests, and they're talking about giving like certain opportunities, but I see that as temporary because they're just trying to like calm the storm. Like they see like the storm, saying like, man, I give you this so that you can kind of like cool down and shut up. But that's not what we want. Like we're thinking about the next generation. So how do we break that cycle? Like
I wanna try to tie all three of y'all, because everybody made excellent points.
Right.
Strap mentioned that we settle for symbols, and it's the same here. We settle for symbols. We got a Martin Luther King Street, we get a Black History Month, little things. We get a statue here and there, and we say, okay, that appeases us. Like right now, they're painting Black Lives Matter on the street. Like whose mind are you changing? Are you changing anybody's mindset with that? No, you just really ticking off the people that
you just make a racist drive on another road. He's going to take a longer route to get home because he's like, I'm not driving that.
And so now we talk about like what is real substantive change, and you look at things like, for me, we participated in active participants in the war on terror. Like, people understand that happened in the Middle East. What they're probably not aware of is that now it's moved into Africa. But a lot of people that were deployed in the Operation Iraqi Freedom and things like that come home and they need employment. All right, why is it that these people can't get employment? They have a hard time getting employment, right? A lot of our homeless population are veterans. So an easy segue for them is to go into police work. I personally have a problem with that because I feel like if these people came from active combat situation and then are put in a uniform, let's just be real. Little kids over there get it popping
Right.
in the Middle East. So if you see a little kid in the Middle East as a threat, how do you turn that off when you get back home? Now, granted, I do understand that rules of engagement are, different, but I also understand that here in the street, the rules of engagement are different as well.
Mm-hmm.
So who's to say that they will still respect that, that protocol?
I got a question for you.
Okay.
How long does it take a doctor to get their doctor's degree in license? About 8 years, 7 years? Somebody help me. How long does it take a doctor to become a doctor when they're in college?
8 years at least.
8 years?
Yeah, think about it. At least 8 years.
Yeah.
8 years. How long did it take you to get your 4 year? I mean, I'm gonna give you a 4-year degree.
Right.
4 years, right?
Right.
Do you know how long it will take you to go through the police academy and get a badge and a gun?
Or is it 6 months?
6 months.
Now,
You're absolutely right. 6 months.
Now I want to touch on something that Dipo said.
Training.
You bring up a good point there. Okay. Now Dipo said something about more training. A lot of people say they need more training.
Right.
Well, we've seen time and time again that they're fully capable of arresting someone like a Dylan Roof, who has just went into a church and committed atrocities, safely apprehend him without harming him, and then show the grace to take him to Burger King afterwards.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? So why is it that somebody that you know is armed, somebody that you know has killed people, why is it that you're able to apprehend him and you're not able to apprehend somebody who may be running away from you?
I would say this. That's first of all. I mean, to be honest, I have to first tip my hat off to people that do that type of job. It's a high stress type of job, right? Mm-hmm. You don't know what situation you're gonna be in. If you're gonna deal with a Dylan Roof or you're gonna deal with the dude in Texas who's all about it. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm talking about. Yeah. Yeah. So, I just feel like with you taking that civic, is it called a civic duty? What do they call it? That job, that duty that when you make that oath to protect, and you take that oath as a police officer. It's for everyone, right? I think the problem is placement of police officers into communities. And understanding their communities, right? So, and by the way, that's my camera. I'll switch it. That's why I keep one. There we go. So if you take that oath to protect and take care of everybody, your oath, right? I feel like the placement of policing within communities is not how it used to be, from what I know. I don't know how it used to be, but from the books I was reading, you police your community. Like if you graduated from the police academy, they will put you, if you're from the north side, in the north side, because everybody there. Correct.
Right.
And then I don't know where it changed, and out of towners started getting, maybe they did a crime over here and then they moved them over to another state to police another state. I don't know. I have no idea. I've not done so much research on that. Yeah. But instead, some people stay policing places that they're not familiar.
Yeah, officers are policing places that they do not live.
They do not live. They don't know the people. They don't know how to communicate. And these create high stress type of the people that are getting in confrontation with the police are stressed out. Because when you're stressed out, what are you gonna do? If I'm stressed out, I'm gonna panic. Either two things. Fight or flight,
Yeah.
Same thing. So that's why I'm thinking in that situation, like, yes, you could train police officers, but can you train them every stress situation? Because we saw that in was it the Martin movie? Was it Bad Boy? What, when he was shooting and then he ran over a girl when he was going through that training, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the girl had and he shot the girl, and then
Right.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's the hardest thing for me as a tax-paying non-American citizen to understand the training of people that are supposed to protect and be the these are they work for you pretty
Correct.
much.
I want to give you another example. This is right here in Wichita, Kansas. Okay. It's actually two examples, but I just want to compare them for reference. Okay. So we have a friend that used to work at Burlington Coat Factory. Okay. So I turn on the news. I'm on the internet, and there is a hostage situation at a Burlington Coat Factory, right? And this person has injured, I believe it was a loss prevention officer. Okay. Again, they're able to safely apprehend this person,
Right,
and bring them into custody. We find out later that this person has some mental health issues.
oh yeah,
Okay. But the point is, they held people hostage. It was a hostage situation. They had hurt somebody. I forget whether it was a gun or a knife, but law enforcement was able to safely apprehend him. Now, on the flip side of that, there was an instance where on the 4th of July, there was a veteran who was having an issue with their PTSD. This is common when veterans hear the fireworks going off, and it takes them back to the Middle East. That one did not go so well. Officers responded and ended up using lethal force on that person. This is someone who the family called the police. They initially called, whatever mental health services, and they instructed them to call the police, probably because, they didn't have anybody on staff or whatever. But again, it's another instance of you were able to apprehend one person
right.
safely and securely, but you weren't able to apprehend this other person. What was the difference? I mean, I'm just gonna let you guys guess.
The difference is a similarity, but without the death, the fatal outcome, and the kind of non-fatal outcome.
Unfortunately, one person was black, the other wasn't.
Yeah.
Okay, that of course, but again,
Yeah. See,
again,
I'll put something to that though. That's a perfect example of you. It's continuous, right? On one hand, you see the person, you see the person for who they are, right? Oh, he's white and he has issues, right? On the flip side, keeping in mind the difference in these two scenarios is one. For the guy from went to Burlington, he was at work and he became an issue to his coworkers, right? Mm-hmm. On the flip side, you have a man who's around family. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Mm-hmm, correct.
So why would you? That's just one issue with that whole deal, right? Why would you think lethal force is necessary? It's almost like you didn't even read the memo going into the situation. Who called the cops in the first place for you to then think that lethal force is the first?
That's a good question.
He's within his family. So how
police? That's
a
good question.
Right. So how did it all of a sudden become an issue?
Right.
You didn't even. It's almost like you didn't even bother to say, okay, who even asked for the police to be called?
Correct.
I mean, like LT said, they probably didn't have enough people to staff. It's 4th of July weekend, so it was like, okay, call the police. They'll help you de-escalate the situation. But first of all, you didn't even put into context that you didn't even put into full context what caused the police officer to be called. And second thing is it's almost like you didn't even you didn't bother to see what the actual situation was. You just took it from a skin color point of view. You didn't do your due diligence to say, okay, what is the actual issue aside from him being black? What is the issue which comes to PTSD? It's almost like it's always an afterthought. I think this is where the frustration comes from. Yeah, apologies at some point become meaningless.
Yeah.
Correct.
If you're not willing to do your due diligence, if actions speak louder than words, right?
Right.
You can't just keep popping people on a daily basis and say, "Oh, I'm sorry," after the fact. Someone's family member is dead already. So that's where I stand on that.
Yeah, I mean, I personally think when it comes to policing, regardless of the fact that you could be from one community as a police officer or like the next one, once you take that oath, like that oath makes you want to protect everyone equally, just like Strap said earlier. I think Strap brought up a point about maybe having police officers from a certain community policing people within those communities. I mean, that's fine, but that's not going to be applicable to every situation, right? Like when you drive on the highway and you get pulled over, you're going to be out of your community, right? And you're a black dude. Like you got dreads and you got an afro like LT and like someone pulled you over.
I took a risk driving here with this afro.
so like I'm just saying, like you hope that the police officer is gonna pull you over, regardless of like whether the black, Asian, or white, they're gonna treat you the same way they treat everybody else, and that's what we want. Like we can all agree right now that like we just talked about like so many issues. Like there are a lot of issues and we can't avoid. The question now is like how do we move forward as a community, like a black community as well, just like as people, right? Like how do we move forward to make things right? Like
good question.
That's the main reason why people are out there protesting. So how that first thing?
Good question. Right now, we have people petitioning for reparations and hope for, like we started off this whole conversation with, we have a group of people in this country that had that head start. They were head start. So it's a catch up game for everybody else, right? And now I don't know how feasible the idea of reparation is, but I know there's I think I want to say Alabama. There's a city that
North Carolina
that had their first bill kind of accepted for the idea of reparation.
Mm-hmm.
So we briefly talked about reparation the last episode and how feasible, that's the word, feasible and applicable it is. But we talked about it as people who moved from here as immigrants. We want to hear from an American, your parents are descendants of, slaves. So
Correct.
I just want to hear your idea of reparations and how that is applicable and feasible in 2020 or 2021, whenever it's applied.
So let's make a correlation here. So we just talked about law enforcement for an extended period of time.
Right.
We have people that are sentenced unjustly. There's a lot of efforts going around to exonerate people, right? Exonerate. So one of the things that happens when someone is exonerated due to, maybe there was lack of evidence, maybe there was some kind of mistake made in the process, some unethical things that happened along the way that were overlooked. Whatever the case may be, after exoneration, they are given restitution.
Yeah.
All right. And whatever that may be. Usually it's $1 million, something like that. How do you place value on someone's time that can't be replaced?
Absolutely.
But it takes a little bit of the sting away. Okay. Now you have something. Mm-hmm. It's the same concept.
Yeah.
Right. So you admit that there was a wrong. Everybody admits that the original sin on this land was slavery.
I mean, that's the second sin. They took the land from the people.
See?
From the natives.
We're on the same wavelength.
Yeah. I mean, that's the second sin.
They call it.
They did it to the Native Americans, and then they got they went to Africa.
Exactly. So from a world context, and this is what they do when they indoctrinate us through our educational system, is that they, forget that part of the story. They're willing to admit that the original sin is slavery, but you did steal the land. You
stole the land,
massacre the people. You gave them diseases on purpose.
With blankets, yeah.
But So, those people, again, those people have a form of restitution.
Boom. Yeah.
They have a form of restitution. They have land, they have reservations, whatever that the state of them may be. Some of them are very different than others.
Right.
I've been on reservations in Florida. I've seen reservations in Kansas and Oklahoma.
They give them
There's a world of difference
and stuff.
They have casinos.
Yeah.
They have these, and we can tie that in too. I'm glad you said that. So people are willing to admit that the original sin is slavery. Okay. The way I look at it different than a lot of people. There's this graph floating around the internet, and it's a timeline, right? I don't know if you guys have seen this. It paints the picture of when that there was actual chattel slavery, and then it gives
Explain the word chattel, because I mean that's a very good word. Mm-hmm. Explain that word chattel, because
it essentially means that you are the property,
and there was slavery that was not chattel too, because they were either chattel. Okay, this is taking me back to history class.
Semantics.
So chattel was like you were totally owned. Chattel, you're like my phone, and then you could be slaves, but you could be seekers. They could be Arabic. They could be Arabics were not chattel. They were free. They were just they were mobilizers, and I mean, it's just there's so many things. There were slaves in Arabic slaves to the European, but they were not chattel. They were not their property. They were still maybe they owed something, and that's why I want to differentiate the word chattel. Chattel is like, it's what based and built America. People being chattel. So
right. So in that timeline, they paint chattel slavery. Then they also paint the Jim Crow era. Okay. I don't know if I'm the first person, but I'm the first person that I know to say that the argument against reparations is, how do you know who gets it? Does every black person in America get it? How do you prove that you were descendants of slave? This, that, and the third. I've recently come to the conclusion personally that I think anybody that has a relative that was in the United States in the year 1968 should qualify for reparations. How did I come to that conclusion? 1968 was the year that they passed the Civil Rights Act. Okay. So at that point, that's when you finally said, okay, you gave in and said, we need to do something about this. All right. I can go on, but I want y'all to throw me some questions before I go into detail.
So I like that idea of 1968 because of the civil rights, but you also have to. I totally understand your concept. That's weird. I wanted to argue with you. To be honest, I wanted to argue with you, but the reason why I won't argue is because I understand the 1968 civil rights movement. I also understand a few years before that how Marcus Garvey was moved into New York. How he moved into New York, an immigrant from Jamaica, and he was part of that spearheading force that led to American civil rights.
Exactly, and a lot of people don't know that.
Some people don't know that
Martin Luther King looked to Marcus Garvey.
So that's just these are small field. See now, that's more my. By the way, I did that research before today. He's done that. But yeah, that's why I was like drawing the correlations of that.
When Martin Luther King went to Jamaica, he visited Marcus Garvey's gravesite.
I cannot argue with your concept. The only thing I'll say this, I'll add on to the people that deserve the reparations have to have relatives to be inland in the United States pre-68 or pre-68, right?
The year 1968.
Okay, the year 1968 onwards. I mean backwards.
Exactly.
Backwards, okay.
Exactly.
Now, this is where I come in with an idea. How about people in Guadeloupe who were one of the first stops, right? if we're talking about transatlantic slave trade, right? We're talking about the triangle, right? We're talking about people in Guadeloupe. We're talking about people in Haiti.
Yeah.
We're talking about these. We're talking about Jamaica. We talk the different stop points before they got to the United States. Okay.
Okay.
How about why don't we put, if we're talking about reparations, why we only put the United States on the board? Why not put UK? And then take it deeper, right? Let's go to Belgium. What's Belgium doing for the reparations? Because now I want to take, because
man, you trying to make me stop at the border, man. Like I'm telling you.
So before we go, bro,
I just play. I
you being real. You being real.
I mean
I'm serious. I'm serious though. I'm serious, but like
that's being honest. That's being honest. But you know, based on what LT said, reparations, and it just got me thinking. And I want you guys' opinions on this, right? Put in context what was given to the natives after they apologized, right? What is considered enough, or is it really ever enough? Because what was given to me, I personally, I don't feel it was much, because even though you apologize for something, you gave something back, who's still controlling, right?
True.
So when we're talking about reparations, and you say you want to give whatever amount back, who's still controlling after that? Or is what is given to you, does it really give you the ability to control, or are they just still playing games of some sort? Or you know,
I think that's a good point, because I feel like whether they give you lands or like the put you in a position where you own something, but they're still putting you within the system.
Yeah.
Like you are part of the system. It's like the Matrix, right?
Right.
Yeah. Like you're not getting out of it.
That's a good one, Des.
Right. Well, and see, with the natives, a lot of their thing is they don't have to pay taxes. I believe they don't pay taxes, and I don't think they pay for licenses, state licensing. So let's go back, because we talking about reparations. I want to just paint a full picture, because I explained the timeline. So you have a period of chattel slavery. You have emancipation. Okay. Emancipation after the Civil War. After emancipation, you have a 7-year period known as Reconstruction. Okay. And in that 7-year period, blacks were excelling. I'm talking about right out of slavery.
Yeah.
They were being elected into offices. They were building wealth.
Yeah.
Okay. A lot of that was, and this is in the South, a lot of that is predicated on the fact that there was such a high population at the time in the South. And and then also that the Union soldiers were in the South protecting them, making sure that they weren't getting mistreated. Too bad. The response to that was vagrancy laws, which meant that if you didn't have a place to live, if you didn't have a job, if they just seen you like hanging around, which is now the loitering laws, you were going to jail, which
stop and frisk.
Which everyone knows with the 13th Amendment did not abolish slavery, but it reframed it as to only a prisoner can be a slave.
Yeah.
So that refueled the slavery system. Slavery didn't go away. It just changed shape and form, right? Okay, now the people that weren't able to, build wealth and go into office, they elected to go back to the plantation under another form of slavery known as sharecropping. Okay, this is supposedly is a voluntary trade, but very much like a record deal nowadays. In the record industry, we know that you get an advance, you make a project, and you always end up owning the label some kind of way, right? It's essentially the same thing with the sharecropping.
AKA taking a very, very high interest loan.
You know what I mean?
Loan.
So it's like, okay, we'll let you live on the land. We'll let you work the land. You have a little bit, blah, 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 blah. Oh, well, we charge you for this. We charge you for that. Yeah. After, you know what I'm saying? Little hidden things.
This was free. No.
In the fine print, you know what I'm saying? Again, that was another form of slavery. Now, there was what was known as the Great Compromise. So the Great Compromise came where they said, okay, look, y'all got too many, too many people down there. That it had to do with the electoral college, right? And the votes in the electoral college, right? And you set that up to help somebody win the election. But at the same time, it was, all right, we'll do that on the condition that you withdraw the troops.
Right.
All this happened in a 7-year period. And then when they withdrew the troops, then it was like, who's stopping them?
Right.
Who's stopping them from doing anything anymore? Right. And that's when everything started going back downhill for Black people. You feel me? And I just wanted to paint that picture so everybody knows that it's not just slavery. Yeah. Because Black people were doing well on their own at one point, and then they were sabotaged. Okay. All right. Well, let's fast forward to 1900s in the Jim Crow era, right? Yeah. All right. Even with that, we know about Tulsa. Tulsa is the main one they know about. Yeah. But there were other communities other than Tulsa, other Black Wall Streets. Okay. Yeah. But since Tulsa was the main one, we knew that they had churches. Yeah. We knew that they had transportation with a bus line. We knew they had their own banks. They had their own airport. They had their own. They
had their own community with resources and everything. All Black owned.
Self-sufficient. All Black owned.
Yeah.
So what happened?
Got burnt.
It got burnt to the ground. Literally burnt to the ground.
Because some guy looked at a white girl or some stuff.
That's the backstory. That's always the backstory when it comes to Black people. But crazy. A lot of people say that 9/11 was the first attacks on American soil on Americans with the use of airplanes.
No, that was that first. Like, they attacked Americans and their livelihoodness and their resources.
There's that. Oklahoma. There was an instance in Philadelphia. There's an instance in North Carolina. I mean, you just have to keep.
And then the most subtle of influences that damage is something called the slow motion damage called gentrification.
True. I'm just sticking to the most brutal. You know what I'm saying?
I mean that's visual. I think gentrification takes more. If I look at Watts,
you're right. But this is we're making a case. We're making a case for reparations, though.
Oh, that's true. You
know what I'm saying? I got to paint this picture for reparations. So what I want to say to that is, okay, let's say Tulsa happened in 1929. Mm-hmm. All right, my great grandmother was born in 1926. She lived to see me, right? I want to say she lived until I was about 19 or 20 years old. So just to put that in perspective, how recent that was. Let's say that my great grandmother was born in Tulsa. Let's just say that for, hypothetically, and she was part of that green, you know what I'm saying? Black Wall Street, that neighborhood, and she owned a business there. Okay. She would have been able to pass that business down to my grandmother. Mm-hmm. My grandmother would have been able to pass that business down to my mother, right? My mother would have been able to pass that business down to me. So now we're talking about the issue of generational wealth. Yep. And when we look at things like crime and poverty correlate.
Absolutely.
You see what I'm saying? And this is the case for reparations, because people always say, that Black people want something for free. No, we were literally robbed of generational wealth. Not only that, when you talk about unemployment amongst Black people, these are jobs that are unavailable because they were burnt down to the ground. Yeah. That we might have been able to employ a Black person. Right. Now, look, that was, what is this? This 2020, that was 100 years ago. Yeah. Some of these businesses may have failed, but many of them were thriving at the time. So who knows? They never got the opportunity, though. We never got that opportunity.
Yeah. And you know man. What?
Sorry. I got a comment, man. Like, I appreciate LT taking us back on his history journey. Because I think we learn from the past and the history to be able to work on the present and the future. Like, we've been talking about like reparation, and which is tied to like past events. And obviously, just because the past doesn't mean they're forgotten. Something must be done about them as well. But we have to think about future generations, like what's coming ahead of us, right? Like we're in the middle of a big movement right now, and I really want to make sure like we do talk about this as like how do we do like what do we do for the future generations? Like what is the according to you the best path forward so that like our children and the children and like all this generation that come after us don't have to go through the same thing our grandparents, like went through. You know what I mean? Like how do we go about it?
I think,
Man. Yeah, man. So look, we always talk about education, right? Education is necessary, but it has to be the proper education. So, and what I'm talking about will benefit everybody, society as a whole. We need to restructure the educational system. So I'm talking about things like financial literacy. Okay. Especially in our neighborhoods, though, financial literacy as a part of the curriculum. A part of the curriculum for poor Black kids also needs to be able, they need to be able to see successful Black people.
Right.
And I'm not talking about not only athletes, I'm not talking about only entertainers.
Yeah.
Okay. We're talking about people like Garrett Morgan. I was fortunate enough to have a Hispanic third grade teacher, and we had a unit over inventors. Okay. And Lucas Rodriguez assigned me Garrett Morgan. Had he not assigned me Garrett Morgan, I would not know that this guy invented the gas mask, the stoplight, and so many other things.
Wow.
Right? But we have to be exposed to these type of things to understand that, okay, this is my history. This is what I come from. You feel me? Not only him, George Washington Carver for that fact. I mean,
yeah. You know who George Washington Carver is?
No.
Peanut butter.
Oh,
I want to add something to that educational that LT is talking about. I think another thing is white lies when it comes to education. We need to find a way.
Oh, there's so many of those.
It's a lot,
sorry.
man. We need to find a way to either force the true stories or do our due diligence of not being ignorant and knowing the true stories.
Or tell the true stories.
Tell the true stories. Trying to, because to be honest, a lot of atrocities or a lot of things that have gone over the centuries. Most times they're not come from things like this, right? You not knowing what really happened, or you not knowing the facts or the story.
True.
It plays your mind in an ignorant way. It's like you're blindsided to truth, and then you kind of sways your thought process, and then from there it's like you're basically lost. You're lost from that point, and so I feel like from an educational perspective, we need to put in. To be honest, I think the most work needs to come from that perspective. I mean, putting things in the light that help us as a community. You
LT. I know you're about to jump on. I would like you to also expand on whatever you're about to say. Also add family to it. Like, how does family play a role in this whole situation?
Ooh. Man, thank you. Okay, so when we talk about white lies, I just want to share a personal experience. So I'm in the second grade, and I don't remember the context of it. It's probably Desert Storm or something. I don't know. I can't pinpoint it. But the teacher says that, people hate America. And you're like, why do people hate it? They ask, why do you think people hate America? And the little girl says, it's because we're a free country. And they're like, well, who knows what a free country means? It's like, well, we can do whatever we want to do. Right. And that, I'm just saying, like, that was ingrained in me as a child. People hate America because we're a free country. But when you get older, it's like, what sense does that make, really? Like, they hate us because we can do whatever we want to do. Does that really make sense? And then you're able to grow up, and you're able to, me personally, I was able to grow up. I was able to do my due diligence, like you said, and say, okay, I'm just using the Iraq War, for example. We went in there under false pretenses in a historical context. They said that, they had weapons of mass destruction. Were that ever produced physically? No. Certain people will argue that it was proven because people mentioned it on the floor of Congress, whatever. I ain't never seen no pictures.
No.
Okay, I don't have no receipts, so whatever. So now it's like there's some child in the Middle East, in Iraq, in Afghanistan, and all they know is that these Americans are inhabiting their home, and I got to do what these American soldiers tell me to do. And so now I'm able to put that in perspective because I've done my due diligence, and I'm able to put myself in another person's position and say, how would I feel if a outside force was in my neighborhood telling me what to do, and you ain't even from here, right? So that's the kind of rabbit hole that you go on with white lies, right? Is this propaganda, you know?
Yeah. I mean, we have this podcast is solely based on solutions, right?
Correct.
And to be honest, with white lies, which Dipo brought a very big, that's a huge point to me. This is like the coup de grace. This is what killed the horse, right? I don't think you can change the ideology of a grown person, but you can change and spark the ideology and mind of a young person. And I'm tying that back to my original point of family. Maybe educating your kids before you take them into these indoctrinations of schools that will white lie them out, give them the real history maybe at home. And me being a first-time parent, even if I'm fresh, these things mean so much to me because I can sit down and say, this is what happened, and I can show you proof. Don't let any teacher, I mean, you could answer that to get your grades up, whatever, depending on how you're placed in whatever school you are, which I don't even like doing, because why should my child or my daughter be in pretense of knowing what's real? You know, just to pass a class. To say, okay, Christopher Columbus was lost. He was pompous. He could not work at campus. And then he came out here and, you know, this is how, I mean, educating your seeds, your family. I think the first unit, you know what? Let me pull that back.
The parent is the first teacher.
Yeah, the first teacher. And we were talking about systems. The first system starts at home. So maybe it's my due diligence to start it at home.
It is. And
to break in the system is starting it at home.
It goes back to what he said. Ignorance plagues us. It plagues us. Ignorance plagues us. So understand in the context of America, the United States of America, in that context, we were kept ignorant under slavery. We were kept ignorant. And then you move into Jim Crow. We were kept ignorant because we didn't have access to quality education. You know, see what I'm saying? We did the best with what we had, but for centuries, we weren't allowed to learn how to read.
Yeah.
For centuries. Okay. You know, and then of course we had to abandon our culture and our language, of course, like that. But and then even out of slavery, we faced these barriers of separate but equal, which is what they called it.
How much do you know about war?
I'm not super versed in war, but
I have this weird fascination of reading about war. First thing they do when you destroy a country or
they take over the media.
They take over the media and they burn the libraries. You gotta burn the books. That's the number one rule. Burn the books. Back home, there's a saying: when you burn a library, it's like killing an elderly person who can tell that story.
The whole culture, you know.
Yeah.
Right.
So in war, they burn any historical monument. You destroy, you knock it down. If it's the wall of Berlin, if you have to kill every historical monument, you got to burn anything that is history. That's the rule of war. And I read The Art of War every day. So applying these ideas and understanding with your kids, knowing that, you know what, the best resource you have is a library, reading and self-educating and being autodidactic rather than sitting down and having somebody feed you knowledge. Feeding you knowledge is very detrimental because there's so many half-baked people, because there's half-woke people who just figured out that they woke up and they got this knowledge and they want to feed your kids stuff that they don't even know how to do, but they will indoctrinate them into ideas that don't have hypothesis.
Let's go back to Marcus Garvey. Emancipate yourself from mental slavery.
Not about yourself, can
Free your mind.
Yeah, there you go.
Right.
I got a point to make, man. You guys made all of you guys made valid points, and I just wanted to talk about equality again and diversity generations. Because, like Strap said, we're trying to find a solution for the next generations. So we know racism is real, and we know telling white lies is real, and we know there's like ignorance out there about like speaking the truth or telling the true story. You know, like sharing the history of Black people of the true history of America. Should I put it that way? But just think about it. Like in America, the majority of people are white people. So like the Black community is a minority. It means if you're going to change the system, you're going to change the mindset, you're going to break that cycle, you definitely need help from the other side.
Correct. Allies.
Like I can make an argument that like a lot of white people are not racists. They just choose to be silent.
Fact.
We got so many racists out there, but there's many other people that are not racist, but they just don't say anything about it. And then what happens is like the kids go to the school and they learn about the white lies that the system is structured for them to to be able to take in. And next thing you know, like they keep like the same story, the same quote unquote fake story going on. So we have to think about like if we're gonna change anything, we have to somehow come together, right? Yeah. And that goes back to Strauss point about family. So it's not just about us, like the Black community, educating our kid about like what is our like our history and what is the true story. It's about like white people who are the majority doing the part as well. Because if they don't do it, we're always going to be the minority. You know what I mean? So to be able to break that cycle, you have to be able to teach. We have to teach our own, and they have to teach their own as well. And we have to somehow find a way to come together to break that cycle, and that starts from like the family unit.
But I feel that's probably the toughest thing you can. But to be honest, I feel that's the toughest. Of everything we've talked about, that might probably be the toughest.
That is very
absolutely, but it is the most important.
It's the most important.
So now I'm gonna take the floor because I somewhat avoided the question way early, and we have to talk about the Black family unit. Just to paint some context, which I like to do, the unit was intentionally destroyed in slavery. Husbands were separated from wives. Children were separated from parents. That happened. Okay. That happened. Yeah. They did that, and it was on purpose. Yeah. Okay. Now, we have to look fast forward because people were still getting married in slavery in secret. We can fast forward to the Jim Crow era because this is when we pinpoint that the Black family unit took a dip. Okay. And we look at things like, this is a very conservative point, but I agree with it. The welfare state, where they said they made these stipulations that in order for you to receive these benefits, we have the father cannot be in the home.
Yeah. I've seen that. I've heard about that. Yeah.
All right. So these are things that we are up against. And I think that's we have to focus on and really explain the importance of the family structure and the family unit. Yeah. Because again, we see these rich, famous celebrities that are getting divorces all the time, and now your wealth is cut in half because you don't have a prenup. Whatever.
Don't get it twisted. Being married is a business. It's a business transaction nowadays. Okay. Yeah. I mean, especially when you have assets and you have different resources to bring together, and especially here in the United States, yes, absolutely. But
to a certain degree,
yeah. So and I could see what you're saying about the family dynamic and how it has been skewed and messed with in the African American or Black household, especially where you minimize and belittle not by words but through productivity and presence the Black man by putting him in prison. And that's, and to be honest, let's put the facts out there. The most educated person in the United States is the Black lady, the Nigerian man, and the Chinese. I mean, it's there. I mean, it's in stats. It's there. The African American lady, Black lady, is the most educated person.
Correct.
And I don't think that's by design, but it could be. Could be maybe the Black man was taken out of the house and both of them didn't have that. And I'm trying to put I'm going.
In a system of patriarchy, I can see that being by design.
It's now becoming matriarch.
Correct.
Because
it has been for a while.
Because prison industrial complex spikes. Now we have the war on drugs. The war on drugs leads less men in the household. Less men in the household leads the woman has to work extra hard. They get education. They get all these other different benefits, whether it's WIC, whatever. They go, and then they're most educated people. And I'm not trying to make this feminine versus masculine type of thing, but it's actual facts.
It's the facts.
And maybe I'm over speaking and I'm bringing in another ideology and the topic of equality.
You just hit the alley oop, because that's exactly what I was getting at. Is that the Black family unit? These are the things that the Black family unit faces. So we have to stress the importance that. It's important to have a Black family unit, because these are the obstacles that are intentionally put in the way of there being one. Now, we have to, which brings us back to the Black Lives Matter movement, because in their objective, their mission statement or whatever, they state that they want to disrupt that. So it's like everything is great until you get to that. And I
heard about that. Yeah.
This is 2020. There are non-traditional things that go on, which I'm not saying that I feel a certain way towards that, but historically speaking, when you look at the Black family unit, that should be something that we should be encouraging.
Don't cut to the cheese. It's the death of the alpha male. The Black alpha male has to die.
That's
the idea of it. The idea of the Black alpha male. And going off the patriarch, that idea has to stop. And it's where I'm from, it's very patriarch. Where they're from, I believe it's very patriarch too, where the father is the head of the household. It's very, it's that. So the balance of power is a real struggle in that idea of how do we place our resource together, and who is the person to be the advisor and who is the person to be the implementer. The implementer meaning my mom implements, raises us clean. Our father is the advisor,
Right. And see that one of the things they say is that, we want to make sure that all Black lives are accepted.
All Black lives.
Yes. It's all inclusive. Yes. But it's that little, the nuance in there is that I don't know if this is specifically what it says, but they want to disrupt the traditional family unit, which is like, okay, listen, it's the thing that it's like the same thing for the Black and white issue, is that just because Black people elevate themselves doesn't mean that white people will have to come down. You don't have to bring down the traditional family unit to elevate or bring yourself to the same level.
Right.
It's almost like the wrong narrative.
Yeah, there's gonna be a lot of editing in this episode because I was saying some stuff. I was trying to get my ideas, and I could say the wrong thing.
I mean, I love everything you guys just talked about, and I think we're gonna have to bring LT back, man.
LT, man. To be honest, these fellows are in Dallas. They're about to make a move, so it's the end of the episode, right?
Gotcha.
Yeah, but I gotta say something, man. No, I gotta say something before we go. Like from what you guys said, I'm hearing like before we start looking like outward, like looking at what's going on the outside. Maybe we have to like take a step back and look within the black community, within the black family.
Yeah.
Like how do we fix like the black family unit, right? Then that's man. Like you guys are talking about leadership here, leadership.
Mm.
Maybe we have to get a topic where we talk about like as a black man, like what is our role to be able to make sure that the family unit is actually strong enough for us to be able to pass down like the good knowledge to our kids so that they know and they're able to be educated. This way we can start talking about change because you can talk about change if things are disrupted within your own family, man.
Correct.
So you have to start with yourself
Yeah.
and then take it outside. You know what I mean?
You gotta have a
Absolutely.
strong foundation.
Yeah.
You can't just-
The foundation is key.
Yeah.
I think y'all let me shoot myself in the foot what I was talking about. Non-conventional. I have to revisit that, but man,
I mean, you know,
I mean, it is what it is. I stand by what I said, but I don't know if I articulated it right because the wrong person will listen to it. And call
We
me,
can expand it next time.
call me an ism. They'll
we
call me
also
some
we
ism.
also live in a hypersensitive
Yeah,
society
people
to
will be
where
sensitive with what I
anybody
said.
can
They'll be
take
like,
anything and take it out of context.
They'll
so.
shoot an ism to my last name. He's an ism. Like they'll say whatever phobic. They'll add a phobic to my last name.
Right.
But ladies and gentlemen, we coming to the end of Center Street Boys. We had Dipo Strap, Dez, and our special guest LT. Everybody, we appreciate you sitting and listening to this real conversation. Peace and love, and we'll be back next week. And hopefully LT comes back next week, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
man. We got
I
Yep.
enjoyed it.
All right. Peace and love. Peace out to everybody in Dallas from Kansas.